That bear vs kayak video kills me, man. Welcome back to Call of Warhammer, everybody. Maximus wanted a rematch in the Kislev vs Dwarfs matchup, and I think this is a really difficult matchup for the Dwarfs for a couple reasons, but the biggest is that the Dwarfs naturally lack mobility in Call of Warhammer, and the Kislev, on the other hand, has some of the best heavy cavalry units in the game. So I think that the Dwarfs' lack of mobility in this matchup can really hurt them, but with that said, Maximus did want to try a new setup. We each have the exact same armies in this rematch that we had in the first replay, so I'm not going to go over them too much. You can kind of see the armies here. Kvasniks, Streltsy, Berserkers is the main line, 2 Sons of Ursun, 3 Griffon Legion, that kind of thing, some Kreml Guard as well. But in this matchup, he wanted to try something a little bit different. So what he's going to do is he's going to set up that stake box again to kind of limit the mobility of my cavalry and make it hard for me to just charge in and hit his troops from the front or charge in and hit his troops from the rear. I think it's really smart that he sets up these stake boxes because he has stakes in every direction, and that's going to mean that I'm going to have to be a lot more cautious with how I use my cavalry. He has the main setup of Alther's Dragon Company as his main line, some Longbeards, some Elders. I think he has 1 or 2 of those. One certainly as a general unit. They have pistols and very scary melee stats, as most Dwarfs do. He has some Iron Breakers, some Mortars in the center here, and some Quarrelers up front, some Greatbeards with long axes right there, and then, yeah, the Elders in the back. So what I'm going to be trying to do right from the start of the battle, of course, is outflank him with my cavalry, get them in a threatening position, completely surround him, and he's going to have to just hold on in that stake box and try to defend against my cavalry attacks. It's going to be very difficult for him. But one thing that I love doing when I'm seeing a stake box or kind of an immobile army like the Dwarfs is throwing my troops en masse from an angle. So what I'm going to be doing is I realize I can't attack his stakes from the front. That's scary. You can actually run infantry through stakes in this game without taking damage, but I don't want to attack him from the front. I want to throw all my guys en masse from the side, which is going to mean that he's going to have a hard time using his inferior mobility to kind of respond to what I'm trying to do. So you're going to see that a little bit here, but the first thing I want to do is move my Streltsy up in front. They're meat shields. I mean, they're not very expensive units at all. They're going to be able to do some skirmishing, do some damage, but really I want him to focus on these Streltsy at the beginning of the fight and just let them get some shots off. They're going to lose plenty of men to the Quarrelers and the crossbows and stuff that's coming in, but they're going to get some shots off, and they're going to focus his attention towards the front while I'm moving all of my troops to his flank. So to kind of soften up his flank here, I'm going to have my Ice Mages start opening up, and they are just clinical in their precision. It's disgusting how good of an artillery piece the Ice Mages are. They will obliterate any unit that you target very quickly, unless they are 2 or 3 hit point unit. So I'm going to target these Iron Breakers. They are scary, very tanky, very strong in melee, and they're just going to disappear under withering artillery fire. So they're going to be off the field very quickly, and that's going to allow my troops to kind of hit that flank a lot harder. Now, he doesn't have stakes pointing to his flanks. He only has them in the front and in the back, so that means that it's going to be easy for my troops to move up and hit him on that flank there where there's kind of a gap left in his line from where the Ice Mages have been doing their shelling. So you can see he's kind of moved into spaghetti lines here, which is smart against units like the Ice Mages. He knows how much damage the Ice Mages can inflict, so he's going to, instead of using that blocky formation that he had in the first replay, he spread out and made it a lot harder for the Ice Mages to really destroy you in a couple volleys. Of course, Spaghetti can only do so much, especially with how accurate Ice Mages are, but he's definitely started using some different tactics here to make up for those Ice Mages. So I am now charging in my Berserkers into the flank here, and this is going to be a difficult thing to deal with for the Dwarfs because, again, his guys are really slow, so he can't get them into flanking positions very quickly at all, and I'm going to always have my cavalry on the flanks there to harass him or threaten the charge. So he can't just quickly outflank my melee troops out here, because if he does that, he's going to be very exposed to cavalry charges from the Sons of Ursun or the Griffon Legion, which are very fast cavalry units as well. So I've smashed into his flank here. He's responding with some Longbeards and some other units, and the shelling is now moved on from the Iron Breakers on the flank more towards the center of his line. There is some friendly fire going on. Not very good on my part. I will say there's probably 150 or so friendly fire kills in this game at least. I don't do a great job with the friendly fire, but the thing is my Berserkers do have 2 hit points, so it's not quite as big a deal if they're taking that Ice Mage friendly fire as it would be if he's taking shots from the Ice Mages with his 1 hit point infantry. So that is kind of a factor there, but I'll be honest, I was not trying to shell my own troops. I just kind of mismicroed them. I do have my Sons of Ursun out on the flank now in a very threatening position. Have to be very wary. In that first replay, you saw me skewer my own Griffon Legion on some stakes. Definitely don't want to do that again. I lost an entire unit to that. So I'm going to be more cautious now. But you can see the Ice Mage is just inflicting so much damage in the center of his formation. And actually, a lot of his troops haven't actually turned to face the threat from the flank now, which I think has a lot to do with the fact that I left some Streltsy out in the front to kind of hold his attention. So I have moved my Kvasniks up as well, and you can kind of see the flames from their Molotov cocktails getting thrown in there to the Prince Ulthur's Dragon Company, doing a little bit of damage there. Do have the Griffon Legion now tied up with some Greatbeards. Good charge there, but don't want to leave them in prolonged melee with the Greatbeards. They have too much attack and too much defense, too much armor to leave, or to want to combat them in melee for a while. So just charge in with the Griffon Legion, pull out. That's what they're good for. They're very fast cavalry units. And you can see the Kvasniks doing a ton of work here. Right in the center, a bunch of these Hammerers and Dwarf units taking a bunch of damage from the Molotov cocktails right there. So, again, going to charge in with the Sons of Ursun to this already depleted Greatbeard, and they are pretty much off the field at this point. They've taken so much damage from those two charges. Sons of Ursun are so scary to fight against. One of the best cavalry units in the entire game, and you would expect that. They ride bears into combat, so they are horrifying to deal with, and then they're going to take, the Elders are going to take another charge. He did get some shots off with the pistols, but did get that devastating 10 or 12 charge bonus off with the Sons of Ursun, one of the highest charge bonuses for any cavalry unit. And they do have 2 hit points, so they kind of soaked up the pistol shots pretty easily. If it was the Griffon Legion taking those pistol shots, the cav charge might have just stopped dead in its tracks. Might have lost maybe half the unit to that volley. But the Sons of Ursun, on the other hand, they're a different animal. And they're going to charge in, do a lot of damage to the Elders. Not going to be an easy fight. It will take a while because the Elders are so elite. But it will go well for me. Now, this is where the friendly fire gets really bad. I don't know why I'm still shooting into the enemy formation. There must have been some unit there that I was still shooting at. They are Berserkers, so they're not going to get completely devastated because they have 2 hit points, but stupid. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'd be so mad if I was those Berserkers. Like, why are you shooting me? But I'm going to notice it eventually. I think I was microing cavalry at this point. I was hitting the Elders and the Greatbeards in the back, which was the only really important units for Maximus still left on the field. So I wasn't focusing on the main line. It's not going to lose me the battle or anything at this point. You can see this has gone very poorly for the Dwarfs so far. But bad friendly fire. Sons of Ursun still tied up with the Elders. This is going to go really well for them. They are one of the few cavalry units that you can leave in prolonged melee and just let them destroy stuff. Really high attack values. The 2 hit points makes them much better than something like the Griffon Legion in prolonged combat. Most of these units you just want to cycle charge with, and ultimately I think Sons of Ursun are probably still best to cycle charge with, just because their charge is so good, but you can leave them in melee. The Hammers in the back here, another huge charge from the the Griffon Legion. That's gonna basically break the unit. Hammers have no chance there. And this is where he kind of, I think he let some of his cavalry or some of his infantry units get too far outside the pike box, the stake box. You don't really want to do that, and the spaghetti line's not going to help you against cavalry charges. That's the worst way to use spaghetti line, is when you're in a long thin line that allows the cav to get its full charge bonus off, and you don't get as good a bracing bonus either. So cutting the Greatbeards out here on the flank, down in melee. Hammerers are about to rout, taking way too many devastating charges from the Griffon Legion, and I broke the stake box again. So this matchup, Kislev versus Dwarfs, High Elves versus Dwarfs, Vampire Counts versus Dwarfs, any matchup where your opponent can field really strong heavy cavalry and you're the Dwarfs is a problem. And that's my fear in Total War Warhammer, is that they're going to have a really hard time dealing with cavalry superiority. So we're going to have to see. There are other ways to deal with it. If they have cheap infantry units that are really high armor, maybe armed with axes that have a bonus versus large. We haven't seen that in the previous Total War, axes having a bonus versus large, but something like that. Maybe there will be ways for the Dwarfs to deal with it. But I do know that in Call of Warhammer, and probably in Total War Warhammer too, I just feel like the Dwarfs, they're really good in certain situations. On a map where it's hard to outflank your opponent, something like Shogun 2's Daisetsuan Basin comes to mind, where you can't really send cavalry around the flanks just because of the geography of the map. That's going to make the Dwarfs way better. In a grind-out melee fest, there's no one better. in a situation where it's a flat map and you can really get outmaneuvered easily, it becomes a real problem. So, Sons of Ursun and Griffon Legion made a huge impact on that battle, taking out elite infantry units. Without those elite infantry units really doing a lot of damage to me, you can see the kills there. I lost about 840, 850, and killed around 1800. So, appreciate Maximus trying that matchup again. It's not his fault. Like, that matchup is just simply very hard, and that's one thing that we've come to realize in Call of Warhammer, and will probably be, to some extent, in Total War Warhammer true as well, is that macro play is super, super important. What your army composition is often dictates how a game's going to go, much more than individual micromanagement and how you're using your troops. Like, you can pretty much win a battle from the faction selection screen, which in some ways is interesting, in some ways makes it really hard to overcome and outplay your opponent, and that's not the best thing. But the Ice Mages got 420 kills that game, almost 420 Blaze It, and I think I did pretty well that game, all things considered. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you all later.